At the Global Liver Institute, we believe it all starts with a patient. So what happens when a patient, a liver patient no less, one of the 500 million people living with conditions that often go undiagnosed, untreated, or misdiagnosed, mistreated, and stigmatized, brings the challenges of liver patients front and center? And what happens when a patient then leads a discussion with world experts in policy, research, clinical care, and wellness on ways to overcome these challenges? Let's find out today on GLI Live. Hello and welcome. My name is Donna Cryer. I am the founder and CEO of the Global Liver Institute, lovingly called GLI, and I have the great privilege of being your host for this and frankly all episodes of GLI Live. But this is going to be a particularly exciting and provocative episode. If any of you know my guest, which millions of you do, thank goodness. Matthew Zachary is the founder of Stupid Cancer and OffScrip Media to discuss cancer survivorship during this month where we honor liver cancer and talk about liver cancer and get the conversation about liver cancer going. And frankly, just mention the word liver in the narrative and dialogue in the same sentence as the word cancer is our measure of success. Not a high bar, but you'd be surprised at how hard it is. So Matthew is here because he is the master about turning pain into purpose, disease into advocacy, and story into something far more powerful, into a movement. Welcome, Matthew Zachary.
First time listener, second time caller.
Fantastic. You know, your story is phenomenal. I'll give people just a little snippet of it. You know, you didn't ask to do this work. You didn't say, I'm going to go to college to be like a cancer advocate. You were diagnosed with brain cancer at age 21, you know, and you're only 25 now. So, I mean, you've done so much in so little time. It's just amazing. You're a concert pianist and composer. Amazing talent. You created Stupid Cancer, fantastic name. We're going to get into that. And the first health podcast, and really ignited a global movement advocating for dignity, particularly for young adults with cancer. And as somebody who was first diagnosed with my first disease at age 13, I so identify, so value with the work that you do, and recognize how unique it was at the time, and unfortunately still. So tell us how you came to be this. Tell us how you became an icon, Matthew. That's how we'll start. That's my
I think
question.
you said everything, so good night. You are hired as my publicist anytime, Donna. Thank you so much for that fabulous intro. I love what you said. Like, I didn't wake up one day. I can't wait to have brain cancer and start a charity.
Right.
That doesn't really happen very often, I would hope. But, you know, you're thrown into a store you never wanted to be shopping in, and you got to figure out on what shelf is what, and what does that look like, and can I afford this, and I don't even know what the price is. And, you know, when you're younger, it's very different. I think the one thing I'll jump ahead to come back to is that the reason I chose young adults, not just because I was one, it's just like the dawn of the Gen X revolution in the early 2000s, was that it's not better or worse than adult and geriatric cancer or pediatric. It's different. And if you approach a human being as a human being first, and then a disease either geographically or genetically second, it's a better way to think about medicine in general. Right. And what you said before, like, we just want the word liver before the word cancer. I'm going to talk about this documentary series we launched called The Cancer Mavericks, which tells the 50-year history of where advocacy even came from in the 1960s. But the episode that dropped this month is the origin of the young adult cancer movement, which was given birth to by Livestrong. And I remember in those conversations, the words young adult cancer had never been strung together before. There were no codes. There was no research. Right. There was nothing, R01 grants. Those words just didn't exist together. So that was the first challenge we faced, is just to get academia guidelines, standards to use those three words so we could file papers and do posters and whatnot. And it sounds like you guys are kind of in the same situation.
We really are. Particularly when I first started GLI, we're only 7 years old. And we were thinking about, what to do, how to boil this whole ocean of liver disease that had so many needs and so few solutions. And so in liver cancer, it seemed to me that rather than me, with my $1 and a cup of coffee, which is good for your liver, though, start just generating stuff. I was like, well, what about all of these folks who have like billions of dollars who are already doing cancer, but like never mention liver cancer? How deep do you have to go to find that it had a less than 20% survival rate? And so I'm like, why don't I just start, let's call it nudging. We'll call it nudging. Nudging them, encouraging them to address a portion of their work and their revenues towards this, very, very deadly, very underserved cancer. So that's where we started. Just like say the word, put some resources, put a spotlight, draw some attention.
Yeah, because stupid cancer was for anyone that was the, aging younger Gen X or millennial, we didn't really have a geography, gatekeeper on where your cancer was, but we had a lot of people that had, everything pretty much. And there was this really unfortunate running joke that they were like A-list organs and then B-list organs.
Right.
And then D-list organs, right? And like the ones that got the most attention were the ones that appeared in Playboy magazine, and the ones that didn't were the ones in the bathroom. So like you kind of go literally down the track on priority based on incidence, based on age. There was so many sort of social variables and permutation as to what mattered most. I'll ask you a question. Is it fair to say that irrespective of awareness of B and C and D list organs, has genetics played a better role in helping to understand human beings with specific gene issues, irrespective of whether it is a liver, a pancreatic, a stomach, a breast, a lung?
I think that is a really important aspect of oncology and patients. Sort of, how do you identify yourself, and how do you find resources, by the genetic basis of your tumor or your disease, or based on organ? And certainly in the digestive cancers and in liver cancer specifically, we realize that and want to embrace people whose cancer may have started in a different organ and metastasized to the liver, as much as folks who have primary liver cancer, because the disorder and failure of the liver then compromises your entire body. But when you have a third of people surveyed who think that they can walk around without their liver, we're sort of starting from behind the mark.
Right, like it ain't your kidney; you only get one.
right. So often I'll ask people, where is your liver, and they'll start reaching behind. I'm like, no, come up front, here, and we have a fantastic T-shirt for last year's October's for Livers campaign, designed by Christina Hagman, Larry Hagman's daughter from Dallas, who had a liver transplant and cancer and everything, and she did such a great depiction of someone just really loving and nurturing their liver as their family did after transplant. But it shows it right here. That's the first thing. Like, you only have one liver, you need it to survive. It's right here. It's often silent, and it's important to everything, whether your skin or your cardiovascular health. And certainly when you start thinking about cancer spreading throughout the body, the liver really is very central to many types of cancer.
Have you thought about going to the Squishmallow company and making a liver?
I have some over on the other shelf, so we can move them to rotate them through the background.
That's pretty awesome.
But absolutely.
Yeah. So I start to think about what awareness really means in 2021, and how it's changed so much. Again, I keep plugging the Cancer Mavericks, but it's like the fights that were the fights that had to be fought in the 60s, 70s, 80s were very different than the fights that we have to fight today. And I don't know how it took me so long to be told this little idiom, but people only believe the sky is falling when it falls on them. So
Right.
is it valuable to put effort into convincing people for whom the sky has not yet fallen on? Grammarly, I think that was grammatically correct. To do X, Y, and Z, or is it more effective? And this is what I learned at Stupid Cancer. It's not like, hey, invincible 19-year-old, you can get cancer. No, it was like, hey, 19-year-old who got cancer, this is totally crappy for you. Let's be activists together, which led to this notion of helping people realize it's a channel for their anger versus which was, contrapuntal. Everything in the mid 2000s was like wristbands and Hallmark cards and you'll be fine and pink ribbons and pink blenders and pink M&Ms and all that crap. And this idea that it's okay to be pissed off, but here's a way to become part of a good kind of tribe that can be angry together for change. And to your point, what we talked about before we went on the air, what does an advocate mean today for the next 10 years? Because advocacy in the 2000s was, we just want to be recognized as age appropriate. And then fertility, right? And then in the 90s, it was breast cancer needs. It was the breast cancer movement created quality of life medications. Antiemetics would not exist without the breast cancer Diana Genentech, for example, that no one really knows about historically. But in the 80s, it was like, we just want to be identified as people who may not die from cancer and deserve to live. It's like all these various different anthropologic epochs of advocacy. What does it mean to, I want to be an advocate for the next 10 years?
I think that's the essential question. And we certainly spend a lot of time, at least I spend a lot of time, studying and trying to learn from our, breast cancer sisters and our AIDS brothers and sisters, and certainly, folks like you in oncology. And I've had some of the great, really conversations with the Livestrong folks, and that really guide my decision making today. So one thing that is essential is our core at GLI. If you strip, all of our other programs and things away, our Advanced Advocacy Academy, I think, really will be hopefully my legacy and our greatest impact on not only the field of hepatology, but on the field of advocacy itself, because I flip the model a bit. So instead of it being about us, GLI, the patient advocacy organization, and here's us building an army, to roll up on the hill and solve our story for a day or something, which, as you can tell, I hate. It's really about, I call it sort of pimping my story, pimping my pain, for policymakers, and I can't stand it. And so how can I, match people's pain points through their journey? Like what, upset you? What, just you just thought was the most insane thing that happened while you were a patient, and you never want to happen to another patient or patient family again? And how do we match that pain point with your skill sets or the skill sets that you'd like to acquire, and then, match you with opportunities and set you up for success on, FDA advisory committees or on, research, committees, or telling your story better in different types of media, so that it's not about, training you for GLI's purposes. It's really training you, helping you identify your purpose and training you for that. And then seeding the ecosystem with liver and liver cancer patients and families, because unfortunately too many liver cancer patients die before they get a chance to become advocates. How can we seed them throughout the healthcare ecosystem so that they can create change? How can they not just, warm a chair or check a box for somebody, but really own the room, be the most, informed, persuasive, knowledgeable, powerful person in any boardroom or committee room in which they sit? That's what we want to happen.
You're building like a talent Avengers agency.
Yes. I might have said in a team meeting, and now it's going on air, someone's like, I'm like, I don't like that font, because what we're doing here is we're training assassins. We're training. And what I mean by that is I want them to be able, like I have, to kill, a proposal that's going down the wrong track, to kill a trial that's not patient-centered, to
Right.
kill a budget that doesn't include enough nurses, at the hospital. I want them to be, deadly in their effect and their words. I want them to be, because we're so underestimated when, oh, you're the patient advocate in the room. Oh, great. We don't even hear from you. We don't even model you in the, in
Right.
FDA, models before. Now they do. Why? Because you're equipped, like everybody else around the table, you're equipped to do this work. And so I think 21st century patient advocacy means more than just having a story. It means being really effective in your use of it, and knowing all the levers that you can pull to create change, knowing what's a real barrier, and frankly, what's just bullshit, and what you need to push against, and what can be changed. So I want them to be the smartest, most prepared person in any room in which you send them.
Yeah, like this notion of like precision policy, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can make up jargon too, pharma, right?
Right.
Precision. Right. So for me, precision policy means that you can directly hyper target the right human being, who can be trained to tell the right specific story, or can be in the right specific meeting to advance the right specific policy. And yeah, so my new hill to die. I'm like, it's a podcast. No, it's live. We're not retaking this again. My new hill to die on after living.
And we don't want you to die, but I understand the metaphor.
The metaphorical, I'm still here to die on hill, is to ideally guarantee protections for all American voters, that they have access not just to the drugs and the drug, but access to the entire system based on better policies that mandate it, because it's not really our job to have to know things when you didn't expect to be shopping in that store.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that, reading a book for a book club, Bottle of Lies, and it's about generics. And it's so interesting to me, and I don't know how we're going to navigate the 1 hour of our book club, because I'm sure all of us come with at least 5 different stories. But the one I want to use here is how many times I've had to be on the phone with the pharmacist, or even some of my own physicians, who are trying to explain to me how, well, that it's just the same. It's exactly the same. No, it's not. And let me explain to you FDA regulations around creation of generics, particularly and biosimilars. And, let's talk about, where are you sourcing this? And let's talk about, is this in a narrow therapeutic range? And let's talk about, and by the end of it, they're like, we'll just, your insurance covers the brand, and we'll just let you have it. I'm like, that's what I thought you said. And so, but I want patients, exactly what you said. I want patients to know what their choices are, whether they're in terms of non-invasive diagnostics instead of a liver biopsy, or whether it's in choice of, the brand name where it's, where it makes a difference versus the generic, or the source of the generic. I want patients who know that to take that on and to work that out. So there's a policy framework and a healthcare system around. So when you're sick, you don't have to know that. It just works for you. But to get there, we're going to have a lot of folks who are really down in the trenches and in the fine print, explaining how, things can happen. We've talked about surprise billing, and I've had hospital vice presidents explain to me. And I'm like, let me okay, so tell it to me, and I'll sort of dramatically pretend, okay, I'm on a gurney in the ER. So explain to me how I'm supposed to consent to this. And they're like, oh, I'm like, no, it can't work. Can it? No, that's something that you have to negotiate with the physicians and the insurance companies. I can't be expected to have that burden when I'm in the ER. That's ridiculousness. So no.
That's the iTunes terms of service metaphor.
Yes.
Like, you must upgrade your iPhone today. Click yes. Like, we will destroy your iPhone tomorrow if you don't click yes. That's exactly what it's like when you're in those situations.
Exactly. So you really shouldn't have to fight those battles, in the moment. They should be pre-decided, pre-negotiated, set up and explained to folks. And so if we can make what the entire journey, an optimal journey should look like for patients, we will have made things better. And particularly in oncology, where we've had patients that the decision they made, as soon as they had their diagnosis, which of course, you want to be on some medication, you want to be doing something, but if you knew that would preclude you from a trial that you might benefit from, you might have made a different decision. And so, can we show patients the entire journey and the entire set of choices, or as much as we can give the picture at the beginning, so that their choices are optimized.
Right.
That's how we want to create changes.
Well, I mean, and in many cases, those choices aren't even presented to the average American. I keep referring to the American voter because I want to take the word patient out of the conversation. No one wants to be a patient. It's a label, it's an identifier. I think it pigeonholes you in a certain framework. But if you go in as, and I know American voter could be, kind of a polarizing thing, but if you think about it, you're a tax-paying citizen and you get sick, and what do you deserve? What is your not a First Amendment right? What is your civil liberty to know what your choices are, so you can make an informed decision whether you can afford it or not? So this to me comes around to this word consumer protection. And that's something that's been floating around this other jargony thing called consumer oncology, right? Consumer oncology is like the new patient centricity. It's just another thing we're using. But if you really want to just elevate the meta of this, you're an American citizen who pays your taxes, and you enter a healthcare system that, and I want your thoughts on this statement, isn't broken. It's designed to operate exactly the way it is, to be in your disinterest. So you're at the mercy of decision makers who they think make better choices on your behalf by not making you aware and incentivizing, to your point of like even prescriptions at Duane Reade are cheaper across the street. You don't even know that.
Right. I think though that there are honestly some parts of the system too, because I had some recent conversations with able to bring together some disparate parts of a large health system, and in some cases like introduce them to each other. And I posed some questions, and they're like, oh, well, we could, I guess we could, and sort of leading them down a path, and like they have all the parts, and it wasn't, in this case at least, bad intent. They just hadn't thought of putting them together in this way they could. And I even showed them like, and you wouldn't actually lose money doing it. You could serve patients better and you wouldn't lose money. And they're like, well, now I'm interested. So, there are ways to create wins, which I love to do for as many stakeholders as possible. They often haven't been introduced to each other, and they haven't really thought things out from the point of view, of the patient. I had the opportunity to sit with, over the course of a year, with a hospital CEO, and we had monthly meetings, and a few months into it, I asked him, I'm like, is this worthwhile to you, or I don't want to waste your time, and because sometimes I would just come in, as a patient, like, this is what I'm going through and this is what I have to, or sometimes I'd come in with, articles about, open table, like, if restaurants can do this, how come your hospital, couldn't do this? Right. And, a host of things. And we had the advantage of, being connected to the Innovation Center. And he said, yes. He said, this is worth my time. He's like, I thought I was patient-centered before. He had actually, created the Innovation Center and created, outpatient things at a large. And his mother had been in healthcare. He came into healthcare with the great intentions. And he's like, I thought I was patient-centered, but I didn't really understand, like, what it really meant. I didn't understand all the pieces that you had to put together, outside of the hospital walls, or like all the conflicting language that you might get from different providers, and the workload. I think he didn't understand the workload, both mental and physical, on a patient, to be a patient or a person navigating the system while they're sick or impaired in some way, and how, they weren't putting their resources in a way that would alleviate that burden and improve their outcomes, and and what they're graded on, and ultimately their their scores and their finances. And so there's really, to me, no downside. And it's always amazing to me when people resist patient input. I'm like, we should be on the same side. Like, you're trying to serve me, I'm trying to get healthier, should be all working together. And often we're not. But I think, in my most optimistic days, that there are folks that just haven't thought about it the right way and haven't been shown the right way. And, and also as patients, we haven't been in, the positions to make people stop and, think about it the right way. The fact that I'm on the board of a hospital in the health system where I was transplanted, and is, I think, what ultimately advocacy means, that we're in those, governance roles, that we're not, I have to admit, I'm not a chain myself to the front gate type of advocate. I admire those folks, but I'm going to sit on the board seat and make the change from their type of advocate. And we need all the different types. I call it sort of Goldilocks advocacy often. There's some who are too hot, there's some who are too cold on purpose. And I think that's good, so that you have to deal with me because I'm just right.
So basically, I'm magma.
Yes, exactly.
I'm the boiling hot center of the sun.
That's right. And so boiling hot center of the sun, in your ultimate, strategy, you stepped down from being CEO of Super Cancer. You stepped down from the organization that you created, and started OffScrip Media. So how did you decide that, come to that decision? And what do you want to accomplish differently with this?
The entire answer to that question would be bourbon infused under other circumstances. But the gist of why I stepped down, I put a very passionate article on LinkedIn, which was viewed by like a crazy amount of people. I never thought like I was that, cancer famous or whatever.
You are bigger than cancer famous.
Cancer celebrity. We'll make a word up. But the gist was, I happened to see a lot of founders who never left. And they just became, valuable, but in a very different kind of way. And I always felt that I had built my own glass ceiling, and there was no way up but out. Right. So there were various factors, the least of which was that my kids had turned 7 and became like cogent that I wasn't there nearly as much as they'd like me to be. Because when they're meatloaves, they'd have no idea what's going on. And
well, that's so that they wanted you to be with them. That's
yeah. Oh, look, it's daddy. He's back. Like, that was kind of where they were at 7 years old. And by 8, I told them I was leaving. They were thrilled. They were aware of that. Like, they didn't like my dad's like, what took you so long? But like, my wife's like, hey, you crazy. But it was, my kids were like, thank God daddy's going to have more time for us. So that was like 90% of it. Like, just, I couldn't be a good dad. And I was fairly confident I'd find something else to do. But the one thing I knew I would miss by leaving was being the host of a talk radio show, which I hosted from 2007 to 2018, called The Stupid Cancer Show. It had 4 million listeners. It's a phenomenon. It started out live, remember, live, like this, live.
Like this.
If you missed it, you got to wait 30 years for Hulu, But so I wanted to get back into media, broadcasting, in audio, in radio. I call it radio, it's podcasting these days, but I wanted to start a media company that focused more on listeners than on how many likes you get on Twitter or whatever, how many retweets on Twitter. I'm just, we talked before the show about age is inversely proportional to how much F you have left to give in this planet. And I should have cursed. I didn't. You're welcome, audience. But thank you. I feel like there's a need to go back to something a little simpler as just hearing things. Like, it's not getting rid of video. It's going back to the simple, authentic nature of human psychology, of hearing somebody that sounds like you, that's entertaining, that can get your interest in wanting to hear more, and who's just really talented at conversation. And there are many people out there that do that, but no one had ever convened a media company to consolidate the talent and build the network of shows and series and documentaries. So the vision of OffScrip Media was essentially, for those familiar with radio and like Sirius satellite for healthcare on radio and podcasting was the grand vision for that. And after 2 years, we've built 11 series. And we have millions of listens across the globe, and we're creating content that, to your point of when we started, like no one ever expected to have to listen to, but they're kind of glad they're listening to it now, because it's not coming from authoritarian medical professionals who may or may not be credentialed and fabulous, but it's coming from people that look and sound and feel like them. And there's never been this grassroots peer-to-peer radio network that's disease specific or issue specific. And I think we really struck a nerve by being able to bring back angry in the right way, because everything got soft again, right? Healthcare's got really soft again. We're kind of bringing back rage in the right channel for it, and making money at the same time, because I think the funders we have realize that every non-branded website, and how many angels die every time a non-branded site is born, right? And so they just serve no purpose. And there's a futile effort to understand patient insights and patient experience and all the jargon and stuff. But when you just boil it down to human beings talking, that's highly desirable. And we've cornered that sort of that intrigue into what those conversations. So OffScrip Media is the #1 healthcare podcast network in the country. We're rapidly expanding our shows, our themes. We're partnering with nonprofit organizations. We're coaching nonprofit organizations. We launched the #1 rare disease podcast in the world with Nord. We have the #1 cannabis podcast. My show is the #1 podcast in healthcare. So these are all really innovative ways to think about what the consumer side of dealing with crap you never expected to have to deal with is all about.
That's fantastic. And we will definitely put the link to Out of Patients in the link to this, in the information for this show, so that we can reach millions more.
Yes.
I think with that, we're going to have to end this conversation today.
Ooh.
Boo! I know. I waited so long. I was so excited. This is really just an excuse to have a way to talk to my friends.
Yes.
That the team will allow me some time to talk to people I get really excited to talk to and haven't seen in a long time, and who I look up to, and whose impact I admire, and who matter to me. So I am very grateful for this conversation. And as a patient and patient advocate and founder of a patient advocacy organization who may someday, I don't know, give up the seat here. I find this very healing and informative, and am grateful. So thank you, Matthew.
So I'll wrap with one. Stepping down is hard. Knowing when is harder.
I love it. Okay, well, I look forward, maybe not to bourbon, but to a conversation at some future point about succession planning and leaving a sustainable organization that is beyond the founder, because I think that is very important. So
thanks for having me, Donna.
Thank you everybody listening. I also want to mention before we're going that GLI is very proud to be supporting and a partner of the autoimmune summit happening October 15th and 16th, and the Cardiometabolic Health Conference, which starts tomorrow through Saturday. Our partnerships are a big part of our success and our reach, and so I want to make sure that people know what we are partnering, so that they can be supportive as well. So with that, until our next episode, which will be on addressing liver cancer disparities in American Indian and Alaskan Native communities. Thank you.
Please be sure to like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. Join us weekly on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Time For more episodes of GLI Live, check out our website, globalliver.org, and follow us on social media to learn more about the Global Liver Institute and stay up to date with the latest in liver health. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay connected.